that's the benefit of when you work in creating partnerships like Global Goals SDG 17. It's all about partnerships for the goals, right? So I think that's what our focus has been, to create more partnerships and put young people right at the center, so then we empower them to go and sort of like work on all of the areas.
Welcome to the Young Changemakers podcast. In our episodes, Sarah, George, and Anastasia will be talking to interesting, curious, and passionate young individuals to explore how they are making social impact in their local communities. So cozy up, listen in, because inspiring stories are waiting to be heard, from the most remote of villages to the steps of grand parliamentary buildings, because power lies within youth. Hello everyone. Hope you are having a glorious and safe day from wherever you're listening from. It's Anastasia here for the 5th episode of our 3rd season. I know, very exciting. Today I'll be talking to the amazing Aashish, the co-founder and CEO of MASH Project Foundation. It's an award-winning social enterprise that is building an ecosystem for social entrepreneurs in India. For me, I'm really passionate about this topic and loved this conversation. We covered all things social entrepreneurship, leadership, developing programs, and mental health. Now, let's get into the episode. Okay, hi everyone. Welcoming Aashish to our podcast today. Welcome Aashish to the podcast.
Hi, thanks Anna. I'm really excited to be part of this Young Changemakers podcast. This is my first podcast. I'm super excited and really looking forward to this. Yeah.
Nice. Fun fact for everyone at home, this is actually our very first podcast in person in a time of COVID. So Aashish and I are both actually in Singapore, which is really nice. Maybe Aashish, you can get started a little bit more on like about yourself and a little bit more on what we're doing at the moment.
So I'm in Singapore, where I'm studying my master's in public policy at the National University of Singapore. And it's been almost 2 years here now, and definitely feels like home. One of the reasons to come to Singapore, or for that matter study public policy, was to sort of understand how governments and policymakers design these policies, because a lot of the work that we do on ground definitely has an impact, but there's a sort of limit to how many people you can do unless you work with these different stakeholders, right? So in the last few years of my journey as a social entrepreneur, I felt to be able to impact a much larger audience, you need to understand how systems are designed, how policies are made. Definitely things that I've got to learn, which I'm now looking to, go start to implement. Some of them already, the learnings I've had have been able to bring up in my work.
Nice. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I think big thing, started your own social enterprise. That's amazing. Could you tell us a little bit more about that as well? It's so cool that you're studying now, but would love to understand a little bit more about that.
Yes, I started MASH Project Foundation in 2013. That was right after my undergrad. But my journey as a change maker started much earlier than that. So I used to volunteer when I was in my high school, and issues related to environment, to climate change were some of my key interest areas. So while I was volunteering back in India, I had the chance to be, one of my team leaders. She told me about Global Changemakers. That was the first time I got to know about Global Changemakers through her. And I was very fascinated about this program of meeting some 60 like-minded young people from around the world, spending a week long with them, learning from some amazing coaches, facilitators, and being a part of this amazing community. Yeah. So I kind of applied, but I couldn't make it through first year, and I was very disappointed. I still remember I was so disappointed, because I was like, the world's kind of come down, as if because it sounded quite fascinating, right? So yeah. But this is something what I tell to a lot of my friends, and to my sort of young volunteers from my team, is you keep trying, and you learn from your mistakes, you learn, and then you keep sort of evolving and keep improving. So thankfully next year I went through and I also remember that I was so excited that I literally jumped on the bed for a few minutes. My mom was like, "What's happening?" And I told her, and she was all very happy and excited. But yeah, I believe that Global Changemaker Summit was a very, I would say, life changing experience because of being part of such an incredible community. And another very important thing share this with all of my peers is that communities make a huge role. I think one of my biggest inspirations come from people you sort of be a part of, right? So Global Changemakers was like one such community of highly driven, committed, motivated bunch of young people. So I think I drew a lot of inspiration to start my own initiative after that one week-long program, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't get over there. It's actually the beginning, right? And then you're part of this community, and every year there is so many more new people who are joining this community, right? So yeah, I started. I just completed my high school after that, and then I started with my undergrad, and I started a small initiative to clean my college campus just to make it free from litter and segregate and dispose the waste. So I did that for a couple of months. And thankfully, one of my friends told her dad, who happens to be from the plastic trading association, like they were the manufacturers of plastic bags. So he reached out to me and said, we've been wanting to do something as a corporate social responsibility where we want to build up an initiative, and exactly what you're doing at the campus, we want to do it at a scale, at a large marketplace. So in India, in New Delhi, we have this area called Connaught Place, which is the center of city, and it draws a lot of people every day, and there's a lot of shops and markets and all of that, right? So we took over that area and worked with the local NGOs to firstly rehabilitate the rag pickers, right? People who pick up the waste. They're in a very, very filthy and poor conditions. So we're gonna first got them a proper uniform, training, minimum wages. So there was a whole sensitization process to kind of bring these people on board.
Yeah.
The second step was to work with the markets association there to kind of help us spread the word and be part of the campaign. We also work with the government stakeholders there to get us the required permissions and all of that to run this campaign. And and then I sort of built that whole program and ran it for about a year, which I believe was also a very fundamental learning experience, because working with so many stakeholders in the whole process, designing, driving, and all of that, right? While I was doing that, I was again an undergrad, so I go to the college in the morning, spend this time in the evening to run this campaign, and we had a team to manage it. But yeah, well, it was very dependent on the grants and sort of donations, and by the closer towards the 1 year, it was about to exhaust, right? And there was a big worry that what do we do now? Because we'd been doing good work, it was been creating impact, it's been talked about a lot of people in the media and so on and so forth. I started reading more about waste management as a business, more about how do people create business models. So
like kind of make money.
It kind of makes money and becomes more self-sustainable rather than be just dependent on some external source of funding, right? So in that process, I met a lot of experts. I went to different conferences. I read some papers and kind of designed this model called zero waste model, where all the waste of a particular place, let's say a bunch of apartments or markets, so small complex, right?
Yeah.
Is put together at one place. You segregate and you have a system to reprocess it right there, and then put that back into the community. So basically what we know as circular economy now is it
I was just thinking circular economy.
Exactly. So was the kind of model I've designed back then. So I pitched that idea to the same guys from plastic industry. They liked it and they put us, a seed fund around, like a capital, to build that, right? And we piloted that project in Delhi and became a huge success. So I was able to sort of design a more self-sustainable model where everything which we were making were also bought by the community. So it became self-sustaining in its way. So I did that, but while I was doing this, I realized, just like me, there are so many other young people, right, who also have some brilliant ideas, or they're very passionate and driven to do something, or they're already doing while they're in school and colleges, but something happens when they graduate. They get stuck, sometimes in the kind of work that they do not like, or probably it's just because of lack of awareness, or they feel like, there's some kind of family or peer pressure and so on and so forth.
I was going to say the pressure.
Exactly.
Always. It's that societal pressure.
Exactly. It's a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like what worked in my case was because I access to community like global changemakers, who are the kind of inspiration you draw. It's not somebody I knew of, right? It's somebody I knew personally well. I know people are doing it like just like me, younger than me, so why can't I do it? So I think that's a very big thing. So community is one big thing I realize is very important for young change makers. So one of the first things that MASH was to kind of design a community. Second thing is you need to invest in their learning skills and constant sort of hand-holding support. So the capacity building aspect, right? So where we bring in mentors, where we bring in modules, where we also work in creating some of the content with our experts on what are things these young people need to start their own initiative and run it, right? Yeah. And third thing is amplification, right? When you've got your things up, so how do you amplify it? How do you reach masses? Once you've reached a certain point, how do you scale it up? So that's how the journey of MASH started. Not everything in the beginning. We started small with a bunch of volunteers who were just passionate about doing something and kind of started doing small events, right? Where we would bring in experts to sort of train them, or we started doing these sort of networking events where we will bring up on a specific topic, let's say a MASH mixer on climate change. So we will bring in social entrepreneurs, funders, civil society organizations heads. So a lot of young people are able to listen from the leaders and experts and sort of build those connections, right? So we did this lot of MASH mixers, and the whole idea of this was also inspired from startup ecosystems moment. Like you have these so many open houses where people go pitch ideas, meet investors, meet their co-founders, meet their teams, clients, XYZ. So I felt like why not for social enterprise development sector, right? Similar experiences. So we started partnering with co-working spaces, started partnering with some of the really cool corporates like Facebook, like Googles of the world, who would be interested to support and just give us their spaces or bring in people to talk, right? We were not asking money, we were just looking for some sort of partnership, which also draws a lot of people, when you're able to partner with big organizations, right?
Those names, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost like a sense of
credibility.
Yeah, I would say credibility.
Supported by a set of big organizations, so that brings in values, right? And you know what, Anna, I feel a lot of this is literally sometimes for us a couple of clicks away. Like somebody knows someone if you don't know directly, right? And thanks to Facebook, LinkedIn's of the world, the world has become so much smaller, and there are people always looking to support young people. So one of the things I would like to tell, if there are young people listening to, is don't underestimate sort of the value of being young. People like to come out and support young people. The moment you start to grow up, people may or may not be that supportive, which they are to when you're a young person, right? They will give out a lot of freebies, a lot of things. They will come and mentor and support. So it's a good time to sort of really bring in, exactly, right?
Just
absorb it and also make the most of that, right? So I think that's been some of those ideas and some of the inspirations behind starting what we do at MASH. And it's been a sort of interesting, challenging, fun, inspiring, and exciting journey so far. Yeah.
Amazing. No, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like it just sounds like you've gone through so much, going from the Global Changemakers Summit in 2009, right? Was it 2009? Yeah. So 2009, and then going to waste management and creating that solution for your local community. Right. And then in that process, realizing actually there's another gap within the community around entrepreneurship, around enabling young people, and you've been able to do that through the next initiative with MASH, which is amazing, and I think it's really cool. Something I do want to just double click on a little bit. You had mentioned the importance around community. Completely agree. I think when it's hard, right? When you have that kind of cyclical journey of a cycle, right? Where if people don't necessarily see success within their own family or within their own personal circle, it's very hard to be able to do that. And I guess that's where the importance of community comes. I'd love to understand from you, with the mentorship that you guys have done, maybe you can give, I don't know, an example where you said because of that mentorship, that person was able to, achieve X, Y, Z.
Yeah, definitely. So, once you create this whole community of like-minded people, right? Yeah. I think there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning as well, right? People learn and share from this. So when you're able to bring them through these events together, so it's so interesting to see. It's a 2 or 3 hour long event, but people end up staying much longer, right? Because they
that's the power of such programs. Like, I remember going to so many places like this where you met such amazing cool people that you don't want to leave. You want to like sort of like
You
grab.
just want to stay for it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
just want
stay,
to keep
because
like,
there's so much
yeah,
to learn from
so
there,
much.
and so much to share, and some
Yeah.
of those connections is what helps you in your journey throughout, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like there have been quite a few examples where we've been able to sort of create or build those connections. So there is this very young girl who runs a social enterprise which works on spreading, awareness on, you know, sexual rights, and like sort of like a lot of work around awareness on child abuse, and does a lot of workshops and training for people. So she was part of one of the workshops that we organized, and we were able to bring in people who were experts on those domains. So her challenge was she's not able to sort of scale it up, except for a couple of places where she was doing this, right? So this particular mentor was able to help her, firstly redesign some of our curriculum, so that would be ready to be fit for corporates.
Yeah.
And because of that, then she was able to scale it up to more corporates who would also be paying for her, so it becomes like a more revenue generating. So the corporate workshops bring her revenue, whereas that revenue helps her to scale it in the more on the grassroots community, right? So I think it's just a small example, but there are quite a lot of other ones where people work long term also, right? And then if they are not able to meet through these events, they come up with specific requirements. Because of we have that ecosystem sort of built and created, we're able to identify the right people, and they could be from any part of the world also now, right? And kind of like do that matchmaking, right? So I think that's what's important. And as part of our process, we also are working now with some of the leading civil society organizations. They're like right now about 5 UN agencies with whom we are working on different programs. Then we work with corporates like Facebook, ByteDance, and like Microsoft, on again various programs that are focused on empowering young people, right? The nature may vary, but at the end of the day, they're focusing on youth. And the good part of it is that we are able to complement with other resources. Like if we don't have that expertise, we'll partner with a fellow NGO or a civil society partner to do that. So we are able to integrate best of the best, right? So we do, let's say, one part which is our strength, and we bring in other folks together to jointly create it and sort of do that, right? So yeah, so that's the benefit of when you work in creating partnerships like Global Goals SDG 17. It's all about partnerships for the goals, right? So I think that's what our focus has been, to create more partnerships and put young people right at the center, so then we empower them to go and sort of like work on all other areas. So we are not very, I would say, cost centric, we are more youth centric, and then we work with a whole range of partners.
You'd mentioned the importance around like community. Completely agree. Like I think when it's hard, right? Like when you have that kind of cyclical journey of, like a cycle, right? Where like if people don't necessarily see success within their own family or within their own personal circle, it's very hard to be able to do that. And I guess like that's where the importance of community comes. Love to understand from you, like, with the mentorship that you guys have done, like maybe you can give, I don't know, an example where you've seen like because of that mentorship, like that person was able to, achieve X, Y, Z.
Yeah, definitely. So, once you create this whole community of like-minded people, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning as well. Like people learn and share from this. So when you're able to bring them through these events together, so it's so interesting to see. Like it's a 2 or 3 hour long event, but people end up staying like much longer, right? Because they've that's the power of such programs. Like I remember going to so many places like this where you met such amazing cool people that you don't want to leave. You want to like sort of like grab.
You just want to stay for it. Yeah,
Stay, because there's so much to learn from there, and so much to share, and some of those connections is what helps you in your journey throughout, right? So I'm thinking like there have been quite a few examples where we've been able to sort of create or build those connections. So there is this very young girl who runs a social enterprise which works on spreading, awareness on, sexual rights, and like sort of like a lot of work around awareness on child abuse, and
does a lot of workshops and training for people. So she was part of one of the workshops that we organized, and we were able to bring in people who were experts on those domains. So her challenge was she's not able to sort of scale it up except for a couple of places where she was doing this, right? So this particular mentor was able to help her, firstly redesign some of our curriculum so that would be ready to be fit for corporates.
Yeah.
And because of that, then she was able to scale it up to more corporates who would also be paying for her, so it becomes like a more revenue generating. So the corporate workshops bring her revenue, whereas that revenue helps her to scale it in the more on the grassroots community, right? So I think it's just a small example, but there are quite a lot of other ones where people work long term also, right? And then if they are not able to meet through these events, they come up with specific requirements. Because of we have that ecosystem sort of built and created, we're able to identify the right people, and they could be from any part of the world also now, right? And kind of like do that matchmaking, right? So I think that's what's important. And as part of our process, we also are working now with some of the leading civil society organizations. That are like right now about 5 UN agencies with whom we are working on different programs. Then we work with corporates like Facebook, ByteDance, and like Microsoft, on again various programs that are focused on empowering young people, right? The nature may vary, but at the end of the day, they're focusing on youth. And the good part of it is that we are able to complement with other resources. Like if we don't have that expertise, we'll partner with a fellow NGO or a civil society partner to do that. So we are able to integrate best of the best, right? So we do, let's say, one part which is our strength, and we bring in other folks together to jointly create it and sort of do that, right? So yeah, so that's the benefit of when you work in creating partnerships like Global Goals SDG 17. It's all about partnerships for the goals, right? So I think that's what our focus has been, to create more partnerships and put young people right at the center. So then we empower them to go and sort of like work on all other areas. So we are not very, I would say, cost centric. We are more youth centric. And then we work with a whole range of partners being able to do that. Yeah, that's how sort of MASH model works. Vision your life on 12 most important areas, like things like health, fitness, career, relationships, finances, spirituality, like things which matters to you. But how do you put this sort of a goal plan and then put it into a smaller, milestones, and then I'm just giving you an example, but as a social entrepreneur, I feel like Global Changemakers, now open resources, toolkits is amazing, same Acumen has been like a very good place to sort of also learn about so many things, which helps you in a part of your more on the technical side of skills when it comes, right? There are so many of those courses on, like, let's say, storytelling, on design thinking, on sort of various things, so on time to time I kind of read through those as well. Yeah, of course, and reading is always best, right? Like if you're I personally don't read to sort of learn more from the skills as such, I would say, but it's more from the inspiration. So leaders who've kind of built something, created something, value to society, and then they're able to sing. So one of the very interesting book is this biography of Chuck Finney, who's one of the most well-known philanthropists, and he's been somebody who's sort of a self-made multi-billionaire, but is now within his lifetime donated all his wealth, right?
Yeah. I think I know this guy. Yeah.
DFS group, like they used to run these duty-free shops at Changi. Now it's all closed because he's sold everything. And so COVID happened. But why I'm saying is because, see, we get sometimes all these ideas about wealth, right? But it has to serve a purpose, right? So you draw so much inspiration from these people who are so purpose aligned, not kind of distracted by the noise, right? So I think as a young person, some of these people are exceptional role models, right? And just like him, there are quite a few more, right? So yeah, those are, I think, things that right now comes to my mind. Yeah.
Nice. Remember watching like a YouTube video about him or something? Came across it.
Yeah,
like such a cool guy. So definitely a good one to read up for the biography. Something as well that you mentioned, like you went through around like the curriculum and how you developed that. Like, love how it was like the first 4 weeks is all about the skills, and then the second part of the program is like, okay, now actually put your skills to work and, you know, get your experience in these different NGOs that you're partnering with. How did you actually design that? Like, did you get that like feedback from the community, and that was something that they had said, like, we want both skills and the experience, or was that something that you guys and your team, like your core volunteer team, had come up with and realized like, okay, this is where we could go? Just want to understand like the process behind how you created it.
So, when COVID hit, so one of the things, we have a large community of young volunteers. So we were talking to them and we realized a lot of them volunteers with MASH and other few non-profits, but and they would do on-ground work during their break times, summer break, winter break, and all of that, right? So that got like hugely impacted, and I felt like if it's kind of impacting them, it might be impacting many more young people, right? So we undertook a survey with some of our NGO partners. These are some of the leading non-profit civil society organizations, and trying to understand that how their work has changed, right? And our findings told us like it's the work which has largely moved to digital requires a kind of a certain level of skill sets which a lot of people don't have, right? It could be very basic things, but they still need to know them before they sort of come and spend their time. Otherwise, they end up spending more time training, teaching them, and it's volunteering engagements are short term, so then it's not effective for those organizations also to be able to engage them better, and for the people to really serve them better, right? And then we went to young people as well, trying to understand their side of things, right? So we interviewed almost 100 young people, and as part of that we realized that what they're looking for is right kind of opportunities, but also the right kind of sort of skill sets so they can make the most of those opportunities, right? So that's how this program came through, skills to serve, that what skills would matter. And those skills actually also came through this research as well. And we had some hypothesis, which we also piloted, tested with a small sample audience, both on the nonprofit as well as from the from our participants, right? And then we kind of then rolled the program out after a couple of sort of tests and done, right? And it's doing really well. If you guys are interested, just go to our website, mashglobal.org. And you can find about skills to serve there and the participants' experiences. If some of you are interested, it's a rolling with anybody could sort of just join the program at any given point, or just reach out to us. We'll be happy to also. Another thing I want to tell Anna, which we've done something differently, is we've got coaches in this process, which are very sort of like help you to guide you and kind of like, because everybody who comes in has a different expectation also, and where they want to take this experience. Again, 12 weeks is too short, but what's the next step? What's the bigger? Some of them are looking to start their own experiences, so maybe this might be too short of an experience. So how can this be a stepping stone to something next, right? Some of them are actually looking for much longer experience, right? So we do a baseline sort of assessment call with each participant, right? So where we do an hour-long call to understand about who they are, where they're coming from, what are their interests, what's passionate about them, why did they choose. So this figuring out why, why behind why you're doing this is really important to us. So then we are able to really sort of customize, while the learning of the program might be same, but the coaching really becomes customizable from person to person, where we say, okay, all right, so if you're interested in gender issues, these are the top 5 organizations, and within those organizations, what's the kind of work which will add you, so you are working for the cause, but at the same, what are the skill set which will help you to sort of have a greater career growth within that particular sector, right? Do you want to do research? Do you want to do sort of advocacy? Do you want to do design programs? What do you want to do? Do you want to do fundraising, right? So like those are skill set matching, and other is cost matching, right? And then the coaches are helping them throughout. So we have a fortnightly calls with them. So 12 weeks has 6 coach calls. And also that program partner, let's say somebody is working with Breakthrough is one of our partners, which is another organization which works on gender issues. So our team also talks to Breakthrough that, so and so person's going to be, and throughout the next 8 weeks, these are the things that matters to them. And so we make sure that those programs are also, the partners are also aware about, what they should be focusing on with that person, right? So it's a kind of an alignment. It does takes effort in sort of doing that alignment. What we are very passionate and committed for is to get value to these young people, because basis on that, it opens much bigger, doors for them. And I think makes them feel like, it's a space where they want to go more. When they feel like there's somebody to always guide them, hold them, and mentor them, they feel a lot more, belong to some place, and they feel like very safe. It's a safe space, right? So I think that's what we intend to build, is to create these kind of spaces which really empowers young people, right? And that's what our commitment is. And then how we do it may vary, from sort of program to program. It comes to that one single thing, that to empower young change makers. Yeah.
Hi there, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far. There's a lot more that we can do. The Global Changemakers mission is to support youth to create positive change towards more inclusive, fair and sustainable communities. We do this by providing skills development, capacity building, mentoring and grants. Head to our website, globalchangemakers.net, to learn more. Now, on with the rest of the episode.
Sound like there's a lot of work that goes into something like this. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face, like during this time of, when you had started MASH?
I think just challenges all through the way. Not just starting yeah. Which is also like at what kind of challenges that you are facing, and then you're looking to solve at what stages. So I think with starting, definitely trying to figure out what problem you want to solve, right? So I told you that we want to support young people with access to, this whole ecosystem of people as well as resources. So that also becomes very wide. So it's difficult to narrow down, right? And finding first few people who will believe in you, who will support you, right? Thankfully, since I've been volunteering and been doing my waste management, so I've had built some of that access already. So that wasn't a very, very big challenge. But yeah, I also, MASH started as a sort of a side project while I was doing my waste management full time. So it was first 2 years, that was my day job, and that was my, side thing. So by the time I took a call to leave that and be full time on MASH, so that was also a sort of a big decision to make, right? So definitely I think it comes with some kind of peer pressure, or when you see your friends, probably in doing certain kind of work, and family. Thankfully my parents have been very, very supportive, so they were very supportive of the idea that what I want to do, and they believed in what I was doing. So that's very helpful, because I feel like if that's not there, it's very difficult for you to do what you want to do. So you need to make them understand and believe, and also give them a window. Sometimes parents are like, oh, is it one of those your side passion projects, or does it really mean something? Is it like there's a sort of a safe career option there, right? So I think awareness is really important, and to sort of make people believe is important. And like running in any organization, at different stages, we've had challenges in terms of resources, finances, and all of those, right? And we've pivoted and sort of evolved our model. We started as a not-for-profit, and then in the last 2-3 years, we started working with some of the corporates who wanted to work with the for-profit or arms of the organization. So we built that. So it's now a hybrid social enterprise where large part of revenue comes from our programs that we do with corporates and some other partners, and that sort of helps us to sustain and run our other non-profit arms. So we haven't gone that route where we do a lot of fundraising through grants or through donations, right? It's sort of a designed in a hybrid way, right? But going forward, definitely we want to keep those two arms separate, and then have more, built on both the sides. Because let's say, with the COVID, a lot of that for-profit side became really, really small, whereas some of the non-profit continued doing still better, because the program commitment funds were for a longer period, right? So yeah, I think last year was been very challenging for us, when a lot of things that we were doing on ground got halted, right? But interestingly also gave us an opportunity to sort of take a pause, take a break, and think about what we want to do, how do we want to pivot. And then we went through our digital programs, right, and started doing a lot of digital campaigning, right? And we built one of these initiatives during COVID called COVID Action, where we were looking at aggregating all different campaigns run by young people, and then plugging them with different places to amplify the work. So, and we also brought leaders to sort of talk about various opportunities, because a lot of youth had they were facing mental health problems, they were facing unclarity about their future careers, employment, things like those. So we started organizing a lot of workshops and sessions, and we brought in some really senior leaders to talk about that, right? So try to build that access to talk to them directly, right? Including policymakers as well. So I think that was a very interesting campaign, and it got appreciation and was awarded by the Gates Foundation last year for the work that we did with young people, and we received Goalkeepers Global Goals Award last year for that. Yeah, so I think that was a very good validation to the work we did, and also motivated our teams a lot to sort of like continuing and further expanding the work we do. And now we're already sort of like building more on top of that, where we're going focused more on terms of skilling, focus more on terms of building entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and also bringing this whole ecosystem of partners together. Yeah.
Nice. Amazing. Running a social enterprise overall, like that in itself is difficult. And I can imagine like at every step of the way, you're going through so many different challenges. So it's great to hear that at every stage when that happens, like you get some, recognition, like, the Bill Gates Foundation and things like that. I love as well how you mentioned around the awareness piece. Like, I guess in those moments where it is difficult, like how do you keep convincing not only others but yourself about like the work that you're doing, right? Because obviously at times it's relentless and there's a lot of challenges at hand. Like what keeps you steadfast and what keeps you like strong in those difficult times?
I think what keeps things going for me is the fact that I believe that there's a sort of a light at the end of the tunnel. So challenges is part of the journey, and we all go through different ones at different stages in our lives. But the magic lies in how quickly you can overcome those, right? So believing that yes, you will sort of get through this, right? And what's helped me is to majorly is meditation. I do regular meditation every morning, and then I also go for about 10 days a meditation camp called Vipassana. It's a very amazing meditation sort of a technique, and the whole idea behind Vipassana is to sort of where things are beyond just from the lens of good or bad, or sort of craving and aversions and all of that. So you really experience it through your breathing and through your body sensations. So I think what we call as challenges is just one perspective. For some person it might not be challenge, for somebody it might be a big one, right? So I think it kind of opens your sort of way of looking at things, and that kind of allows you to sort of look through an opportunity within adversities as well, right? So yeah, I would suggest like meditation to everybody. It's really, regardless in whatever age and stage, and even if you're not facing challenges, just helps you be more calm, helps you be more focused, helps you be a lot more just at peace, right? Apart from that, of course, I think being surrounded by positive people who can guide you, mentor you, so that you should always have a couple of people whenever you're feeling in a certain way stuck, right? Like what do I do next, is to go to them and seek guidance, right? They may or may not be the best of the friends, but they might be very good in terms of guiding through, So I think having those kind of mentors, so I think those are very helpful, and time to time I always kind of reach out, both for professional and personal areas where I feel needs guidance, right? So yeah, I think those, and of course being a part of communities like Global Changemakers is also fantastic. I've been friends with so many of my folks from my batch, and on time to time I do talk to them. They talk, they reach out to me, and you feel like being part of this global family where and some of us are, while we are running our own initiatives, have similar challenges to go through, regardless in what part of the world we are as a young person, right? So I think feeling like sharing with them, seeking sort of support or seeking some kind of time to time help is also a very big sense of sort of I would say have this being part of this community and a safety net of sorts, right? So I think just be more actively involved. If you're not part of any such communities, there are so many out there,
And doesn't matter even if you're not in sort of social entrepreneurship, change making, whatever you do, right? Find people like you who believe or who think alike, because then there's so much to learn from them. And being a part of the community kind of helps you to navigate through some of these challenging times, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I completely really love your approach. I think overall with not, I think first of all, you're very aware of the situation and knowing, okay, I can definitely overcome it, and that being, that light at the end of the tunnel, which I think is really cool. And then also, I really love even the idea that you your meditation and taking the time out to breathe. And I think today, with so much overload of, you were saying earlier, information and content and news and everything, it's good to just take a step back and come back to yourself and reflect on that. So I really love that, and definitely something I want to try to implement in my life as well. I guess another thing as well, you're leading this whole big social enterprise. Throughout all of this, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in maybe your leadership style from your college experience of trying to reduce litter in your campus to now actually having your social enterprise and leading a big group of people? How do you feel you've learnt about your leadership style throughout that whole period, and then how do you feel you've continue on moving forward?
Okay, so I think my personal leadership style is always been listening to the people and finding solutions to their problems and building around it. Like what I just told you about this program, Skills to Serve, was it was a good example where you just kind of figured it out from the community of volunteers around you that this is the challenge they're facing, and kind of build a solution around that, right? And that's been the case so far, even with MASH, through while I was doing waste management, I figured out a lot of young people are not continuing working on their, projects, and they sort of drift out. So how do you build sort of this safe space and ecosystem where they can keep continuing doing what they want to do? So I think my leadership is very evolved through the process, but it's more about looking at problems and finding the solution. So it would, I think, continue to be like that going ahead. It's just the kind of problems, the kind of solutions that would come would probably vary. And I think being at a public policy school, the lens of looking at problem is also significantly evolved, I would say, where you're talking about not just a few 100,000, but you're talking about sometimes millions of lives being impacted just by a few decisions that are taken, right? So it's very, very important to have sort of a 360-degree view to things, right? So you need the right information, you need the right data, you need consultations with multiple stakeholders, which we would not think when we're doing our programs, which would just focus on a certain small group of people, right? So I think as you continue to scale up, grow in your leadership journey, you also need to sort of invest in your learnings as well, so you could lead better, I think. So good leaders are the ones who are able to first look at the problem, but also look at what it takes to make that right decision. And sometimes that may also include investing in yourself, right? So I think that decision to sort of pursue higher education, I wasn't a very big sort of a fan or a believer in the beginning when I did my undergrad. And as an entrepreneur, you always feel like, it's a huge opportunity cost, right? Why do you want to spend 1 or 2 years doing a master's, right? But at some point I felt like it may add a certain value, and like I said, having some good close group of mentors, friends helps. So I always sought their guidance, and I think I was able to have a really nice team, a very good committed team back in India who could manage while I'm in Singapore and studying, and then I do a lot of work with them virtually. But yeah, having a good team allowed me to take that decision and then do this, right? But yeah, that's what I would like to tell. There is no sort of a particular standard way of going about it when it comes to your leadership style and in terms of how you want to
impact. But you need to know that leadership is all about making a positive influence to your community, to the people who look up to you. And for that, what would it take you to do that, right? So I think, and that would really from situation to situation, people to people, places to places, right? But just open to listen, open to learning, and most importantly, be empathetic.
Love that. I think like that line around open to listening, open to learning, and really being empathetic. Like that's especially so important. Like when you're in that leadership position. Last question to end on. Okay, we've talked about leaders. We've talked about yourself as a leader. Who for you is like your role model that you really look up to? Someone that you look up to. It can be like personal, or maybe someone that you don't know. Yeah.
I think personally, I've been inspired by a lot of leaders who've had a lot of positive influence from different walks of life, and I've also had a great fortune to meet some of them, which includes Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. We even worked with his team on a few projects in India, and they were doing a few things. So and have had chance of having conversations with him. So and at his age, he's full of energy. He gives you full attention, like he's there with you. You wouldn't feel like he's like, there might be 10 and hundreds of people around him, but then if he's with you, right? And just his journey has been phenomenal. I think when I first heard about social entrepreneurship, it was because of Professor Muhammad Yunus. He got the Nobel Prize just a little before I had a chance to go to Global Changemakers. So this was at one of those times of your life when you're very young, but you're also learning, leading, and also building a lot of your role models, right? So definitely Professor Yunus, and then I think a lot of young people who've done some incredible work, and I see them all the time around me. In fact, some of my global changemaker friends are some of the biggest inspiration, and I'm not saying because of being on the Global Changemaker podcast. Yeah, but I genuinely believe that people around you who are similar, in terms of ideas, in terms of your age, in terms of backgrounds, and they're doing some incredible work, that inspires you to sort of go. So I clearly remember, I don't want to right now take names because then I feel like I might miss out on a couple of other ones, but definitely there are a couple of them who have been inspiration through and throughout, and we definitely get to talk, to learn from each other. And a lot I have done is also been coming from being part of such communities, and I think that. And I already talked about Chuck Finney because of the philanthropy. There are quite a few of those in India who are like probably so not just because of the giving, but they're so much invested in terms of the work they do, and have built like great institutions, right? And that's something inspires me. How do you build institutions which kind of grows beyond you as a person, and it's been taken over by people and then scaled up and created sort of that scale and legacy, thought, right? And that's what personally it inspires me, right? So definitely one of the big ones is Ratan Tata and Tata Groups. They are invested so much in philanthropy. They're one of the biggest business groups in India. They do some incredible work on ground. So I think those stories and those people inspires me the most. I had a chance to meet Bill Gates last year. Couldn't go to the US for the award because it was virtual because of the COVID. But a year before, I was also part of the Global Goalkeeper Summit, and Bill Gates has been so. Interestingly, I remember there was this. Since we are doing a podcast, I remember one of my very first radio interview. I was probably 13 or 14, right? And that person just asked me on the radio that, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said philanthropist, and she was like, what do you mean by that? Probably she didn't heard a 13-year-old talk about philanthropist. And I said, oh, Bill Gates is a philanthropy, and he's just started doing philanthropy in a big way, right? Everybody knew him because of Microsoft, but very few knew him. This is like way back, like almost
way back, So not many knew me because of his foundation's work, right? I said, no, this is what inspires me, like if you can only be a philanthropist when you made that kind of money. So I am, it's taken, that you would make money, then only you could give, right? She was laughing on the whole, like, wow, that's quite a thing that people want to be a billionaire. You're like, that's the easy part, right? Let me talk about what's next.
After I become the billionaire, I would then become the billionaire.
Exactly, right? So yes, I think both Bill and Melinda Gates, and not just because of the work they do, but they're so invested in it, and and then they go to the problem, they learn, they go to the communities, they have such an incredible team of people around them, which helps them to sort of really sort of find the issues they want to invest. And it's just not limited there. They're inspiring a whole generation of such similar people to also come out and give, which kind of is amazing, right? So yeah, those are some of the inspiration I can keep going on and on about.
I was gonna say, I don't think we'll ever. There's so many, it's. I love as well that you're still in touch with some of the people from your cohort from Global Changemakers Summit, like that being 11 years ago, still in touch with them today. Like, it sounds like they're lifelong friends, and it sounds like, even like with time, if anything, that friendship becomes stronger, which is, super great to hear. And then everyone else, just completely agree. Great role models. I love as well that you're, thinking about becoming philanthropist. Like, that's amazing. And it's, even from that age you knew, and then being able to meet him, that would have been a really cool experience. So
yeah, it took me about 18 years to get there.
18 years, but we got there. If anyone listening wants to get in touch with you, is inspired by all the work that you've done, how can they do that?
Very easy, just like look me up, probably I think there's just one person with my name, Aashish Beergi, and I spell my surname as a beer and a GI, so not many people forget that it's called. And sometimes people also misunderstand as hashish, so it's hashish and beer, like, you would remember. But yeah, I'm very, very accessible on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or wherever. And I think Global Changemakers community and the website and all of a lot of our changemakers are also featured there. So it's kind of really easy to sort of look up. And I keep getting a lot of messages sometimes from people who also want to become social media or already doing work but want to talk. And at some point I was there, and at this point also I look up to a lot of people like that who I've never known, but just because their journeys are very similar to, or they inspire me, I reach out. So it's a beautiful way of like giving back and being in touch. In fact, as we speak, I'm talking to somebody later today in the evening who's just reached out like that, right? And so it's
like that network.
It's a network, and then like I said, we are part of this big global family, and the good part is technology has brought us together, like much closer actually.
Yeah.
So we're happy to touch. If any one of you are listening to this right now, I'm Aashish. I think my name would be on the thing.
It'll be on the podcast.
On the podcast, but in case
we'll put all the links in
if you're listening this on Spotify, so then it's AASHISH and Beergi with beer, BWRNGI. Very simple. There's just one with that name. Yet, I don't know. Thanks.
Nice. So that sounds good. We'll definitely put all of the details in the show notes as well, so you can be able to check it out. So if you're listening to this now, you can check it out.
Like,
there.
Share, and comment.
like, share, and comment, all the good stuff, and subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you so much, honestly, for your time today. Like, I have loved learning about everything about MASH and your life journey. Like, can't wait to hear more about what happens in the future. And thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to do this in person with you, and really excited to be part of Global Changemakers, Young Changemakers podcast. So really looking forward to this. Thank you so much, Anna.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember to help us create a greater impact by sharing this and encouraging everyone on your social media to take a listen. If you want to reach out, you can contact the hosts via podcast@global-changemakers.net, or feel free to message us on Instagram @globalchangemakers and Twitter @wearegcm. We'll be very happy to talk to you and answer any questions. Remember to follow us and subscribe to this podcast. See you in the next episode. Take care.